July 13th. Adequate notice has been provided for this meeting. This is our committee of the whole for tonight, and then we're going to go into our meeting, our actual meeting a little later. So, Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown is not here. Mr. Chu?
Here.
Mr. Craig? Mrs. DeMarco?
Here.
Mrs. Devine?
Here.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Here.
Mrs. Sherman?
Here.
Mrs. Z? Here. Mr. McMillan's absent. Mr. Dilkus?
Here.
Mrs. Maya?
Here. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay. Dan. Okay, so, let's see. We're just going to go on to 5. Okay, can I have a motion to go into committee of the whole, please? Thank you.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we're going to, the public comment section would be for the actual meeting, and so now we're just going to talk about the other items on the agenda. Okay, do you want to do section 7? Okay. Do you have them listed here, or do you want to just do, I don't see them on the agenda. Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. I'm in the wrong place. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the topics first. So, our big topic is the operational referendum. So, I think in the discussion section today, Beth Ann put in an overview for everybody to look at. Have you guys had a chance to see that, look at it?
If everybody goes to the executive content section. Under finance, under section 7, under my section, under my discussion items, I was asked to, I'll just give a little preview. So there's 2 laws on the books that allow for a referendum. One has been on the books forever, and that's 18A 2240. I call that the Robbinsville clause. And then the new law that was just passed by Murphy in the last year of his legislation. So I just kind of broke down the differences. Basically, both allow for referendum. The first one, the Robbinsville, you could do it anytime, and you can do it at all the special elections, so there are 4 dates during the school year that we've talked about. The Murphy law, the Murphy, I call it the Murphy interpretation, basically allows the same thing, but it allows you to go for operating referendum but only one time during a school year. So I did reach out to the county office for some clarification. I have a call with them tomorrow at 3. I have a Google call. I didn't ask the attorney for a legal definition, but if we get closer to wanting something more in writing from our attorney, because Robbinsville was kind of rogue when they did this, I think you remember me talking about that. I kind of just broke out basically a little summary of each. Preferably, like if we involve the DOE and the county office, they're going to say go with the Murphy, the Operational Referendum Authority. But again, if you do that, it's only one time a year. However, Robbinsville allows for any time. So if we wanted to do it the Robbinsville way, if you follow me, let's say I think we all agreed to go for November. If it fails in November, under Murphy, it's one time a school year. We're done. If we do the Robbinsville law, again, there's 2 laws on the books that allow for this. The 18A 22-40, you can go you can keep going. You can go to 4 times. So I just kind of broke out the pros and cons of both laws, so you guys are informed on it. And then I just kind of broke out what it would be for. Obviously, we discussed this. There's certain things that if we go with the Murphy law that we would have to show to the Department of Ed and the county office, which I believe we 1,000% have covered this in the last 3 years. The first would be that we have a multi-year budget imbalance. We check that box in spades. That we've already had made reductions. We check that box in spades. That we've implemented efficiencies and shared services throughout the district. Again, we've been doing shared services since 2013. And then specific programs and staffing that will be supported by the additional levy. So that's what the county, if we go with the Murphy law, that is what we would have to identify. And then I broke out the different bands of, dollar amounts. The first one being $2.5 million to $3 million. And again, it's an easier tax impact for the taxpayers. It's more politically achievable. I kind of broke out advantages and disadvantages because I didn't know how you guys wanted to digest this. This is how I process. And then the disadvantage, it doesn't cover, obviously, our entire structural deficit. The one that I think is more likely, I guess it's the middle, because where most people wind up, you wind up in the middle. The 3.3 to 3.5 million, this kind of aligns with our current projected structural gap, the one we've been struggling with every year. It does address directly our operating imbalance. It's a very clear message because it pretty much lines up with what we've been saying for 3 years. Provides some financial stability, excuse me. The disadvantage is a larger tax impact, requires a lot of community engagement, but this is the option that I would recommend. And then I drafted a sample question, kind of based on the Robbinsville sample that I've provided, but just it's very simple. We are trying to preserve our instructional programs, maintain our staff levels, support student services, and sustain our current educational programs, period. And then and again, any exact wording would have to go to our council and the county office. So I put that caveat in there. And right now, that impact would be estimated at $1,093 per average home. And the average home is $448,000. Now, the shoot the moon dollar amount, in a perfect world, it's Beth Ann's perfect world, and everything's great, and I can do the budget in like a week, and everything's hunky-dory, it would be $4 million to $4.5 million. That would completely eliminate any structural gap, because I believe that number closes the local fair share issue. And stop. At that point, we could start restoring our reserves. We could probably address some deferred needs in our buildings, and hopefully absorb some future cost increases, because I know we're getting ready to go into negotiations. So this is just me, like, snowballing, throwing everything out there. Again, I have a call with the county office. They're not going to put anything in writing, but I am going to tell you, I had a phone call with the Camden County BA. Tomorrow I have a Google call with 2 county BAs. They're going to tell you do the operational one, but on the phone they're going to tell me to do the Robbinsville one, because you can go more than once. Unless we know for sure it's going to be a slam dunk and we're going to pass, because with the Robbinsville model, you have the ability to continue to go out and ask your taxpayers for what we need. So with that was a very brief overview. I cut and pasted everything into the executive content, so what was I going to say? So again, after the discussion tonight, and if you guys go home and you keep rereading it, and if you have more questions, you can email me, but I just wanted to kind of put the 2 laws side by side, and then kind of draft where I felt the discussions may have been previous to this evening. So that's that.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
That was really helpful. I'm going to let everybody else ask questions before I...
So I have a question. What would stop us from doing like the first Murphy one and then like doing the Robbinsville one if the Murphy one fails? Is there any?
Absolutely nothing. And I'm actually,
Okay.
that's one of my questions I'm going to ask to the county.
Okay.
Because I remember when this happened, was it a year and a half ago when I first brought this up, and I emailed Robbinsville. I emailed the Mercer County Business Administrator, and he would not put anything in writing. I don't know if anybody remembers that. He wouldn't put anything in writing to me. So I have a call with them because I think that's I think that's what they're going to probably tell me tomorrow is there, as I said, there's two laws on the books. Both allow me to do the same thing. One is I can keep asking 4 times a year. The other one is a 1 time a year. But no, you hit the ball right on the head, and that's probably going to be a question that I ask. But I wanted you to just be aware of both methods. I think the process and how we get there is exactly the same. We need to discuss. We need to come up with a number. The unified messaging that we are preserving essential programs. We are, maintaining our school district. Very simple, very easy to understand. We just, like, as a group, need to zero in on which option. And then from there, I can figure out, with the lawyers and whatnot.
Just building on Stacy's question, with regard to the once per school year, is that if we did it in November, and then does that reset in January 2027, or is the school year 10-month calendar? Got it.
And then I have another question. Under the discussion items, you have it outlined the tax impact for the 3.3 to 3.5 million range.
Yes, I have the others. Let me see. Dr. McDowell
Okay.
started a document. I believe the first one is $983.
Okay.
I think the second one is $1,311. Correct me if I'm right, Fred. 1311. The first one's 983. The second one is, yeah, that one's in there, 1,093. The last one is 1,311.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've added, if you refresh your screens, I've added into under executive content in committee of the whole, the same information with all of the numbers.
So I'll just make a comment and ask a question. So the goal is to really talk through what our next steps are. Some of the questions in preparing for this is that we've made statements in committee of the whole and at our regular board meetings already that we can go out 4 times a year. So we really want to be precise about what is this process going to look like for the community, particularly given that we've heard already there's questions around, well, why didn't you do this already? Why did you not decide to go sooner? So wanted to make sure we're all really clear on our initial path forward is at least November, and we will keep going. I'm not sure that there's a reason why we would believe that we should not be going 4 times a year unless there's somebody who's going to respond and say we can't. And then what we need to demonstrate in terms of, particularly around the services that we are looking to have supported, we need to be really clear and articulate, I think, not to the community necessarily, but really to the county, what are those services? And that's where I'm at least hoping we can get a finer point on the specificity around what we are preserving, and knowing we have to talk through pay to play, that sports, extracurricular, support staff, is it curriculum rollout? So let's make sure we're clear as people ask, well, what does that mean? So that we have those examples really clearly outlined so we can articulate them.
What is the cost connected to going out each time?
When we did the bond referendum, it was like in the 20-something thousand. Whereas we share the cost when you go out in November, because they already have a general election on the books. So we would be sharing it with the county and whomever. When we go out ourselves, we foot the whole bill ourselves. So we pay for the poll workers ourselves, the ballots, everything ourselves. So there was at least in November, it would be cheaper because we're splitting it against, I guess, 3 government entities. If it doesn't pass in November, then the cost, we would have to bear the entire thing ourselves.
And is that reduced cost in November around the 20,000 mark, or
it would be greatly reduced? Yeah.
It would be reduced. Got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because the ballot, they have to pay to print the ballot, and then the machines have to, that they pay you to set up the machines, and then, they pay for the poll workers. So whatever the total cost would be split between us and the county, and I guess if there's any state representatives, like whoever's on the ballot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is the time frequency between, how quickly, again, can you go out for another if the first one does not pass?
The question would already be approved. So it would just be getting back on the ballot. So if we don't pass in November, the next available time would be, I'd have to see if we could turn it around in December. That might be, the county might need a little longer, but definitely January. And then again in March.
Would March be the latest?
March would be the latest, because if it's a good vote, then when we submit our final budget in April to Trenton, I can roll that revenue in. Yeah.
When do we have to, like, what's the timeline for deciding by, like, let's say we wanted to get it on the ballot for November, when do we have to have the language and everything submitted?
I would probably shoot for having a question August to get it to the county to approve it, so that the county has it in September. Yeah, yeah. The way I can send it to the county. But they need, 60 days, I think, is the minimum we have to give Camden County.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, because they have to do the ballot, so they would have to add the question, so they would need ample time to do that, especially with the November one.
so ultimately, August is when this sample, right, so the intent of showing the sample is that we're gonna present this is the wording, we have to approve it in our August meeting essentially.
Yes, I would probably have it would be a motion, at least one or two motions on the agenda approving us to do this, and the sample wording, that I would then send to the county. And they would need I believe I have to send a copy of the board resolution along with that to the county.
If we go out in November and it unfortunately doesn't, is not an affirmative outcome, and you decided to amend the language, we would have to repeat that process again, right? Then a new language would need to be board approved to the county, and so that would impact the timeline, okay.
So depending on what price point is agreed upon, then you guys would give us like a list of what it actually, when we say restore reserves, eliminate structural gap, like would you give us specifics of what we can bring back, what we're keeping, like, because I think that's how we have to present to the community, is very specific information, yeah. But depending on what price point, I'll call it, we decide with, is when we'll get more information from the district.
Because the way I look at it, the middle option, it's hard to say. I know exactly what you're asking for, but it's very hard to do. With the middle option, it's not like we're bringing a lot of things back, because when I roll this budget forward, which I've already done, with increased cost of healthcare and teacher salaries, right out of the gate, we're probably looking at $3 million upside down. So that's not bringing anything back.
Okay, so
That's just like restoring.
Yeah, so we
Now,
could
if you go to
say-
the pie in the sky option, then yeah, let me go to town. I'll tell you exactly, like, because then it's the scenario of we're bringing things back, right?
So-
And the things, we would look at all the things where I would start probably as administrator, the last 2 or 3 budgets where things have been reduced, we would start looking at bringing some of those items, obviously, Dr. McDowell and Ms. Hal Turner would, have to say instructionally, but we'd look, some of the things that we've unfortunately had to let go, we would probably.
So we would present the middle option of basically.
That is
this
maintaining what
just
you have
we
right now
right
today.
now. Okay.
Yeah,
But
because.
what I'm trying to say is
yeah.
going, the pie in the sky is
Yep.
really less than $200. So being able to sell that to the community of saying for whatever $150 more a month or a year.
You get
right?
this back.
This is what you'd get back.
Yeah,
'Cause
understood.
that's what the community wants
Yeah.
to hear. That's what I want to hear. Like, what are we getting back for this money? Like, what am I
Right.
getting? And then being able to sell that is a small amount of money for what we're getting. But so if that's where
Right.
we go and what we choose,
Correct.
you guys would be able to give us
the handful of things that we will, maintain and then bring back?
Correct.
Or whatever that it looks
Yeah.
like? Okay.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to add the caveat. The middle one, that's kind of, I always wind up in the middle. That's just maintaining, because I know when I roll it forward, I don't think healthcare is looking any better. So that's just me not having to gut you again next year and have these awful meetings on repeat again next year. The very last item would be my pie in the sky. Yes, let's please do this, because then I think everybody wins. But again, I don't decide. So that's why I wanted to give you options.
I think, yeah, I always caution with this because I think when we say we're gonna be able to bring things back and then teacher salaries jump more than anticipated, or, the cost of whatever continues to skyrocket, then we get put in a place where we said we were gonna bring something back and we didn't. And it's not because we didn't want to, it was because the things that we have to have became very very expensive. But I do think it is important to say, like, one, what happens if we don't pass any of these? And then, yeah, what are we looking at in 5 years if we pass just the baseline? Like, so a lot of these things end up just kicking the can down the road to a future board to have to deal with, but, so I think maybe we would start with what happens if we don't pass any? We go out 4 times, so we're 60 grand in the hole, give or take, because we failed each time. What's our next budget? What's budget looking like next year?
I think I said this in the spring. I don't know where we go from here. If healthcare is going to continue to be as high as it is, 30% increases, we are entering into the last year of the teacher's contract, so that's going to have to be negotiated. Yeah, it will not be pretty. I don't know, because it's not like you have another building to sell. However, I don't want to be like sky is falling, because in my world it's always falling. But on this agenda tonight is I've issued an RFP for appraisal services to get the Garfield property appraised. So the good news is if we're able to sell Garfield in enough time to bring that money into the bank by springtime, we will have some money to offset whatever hell is waiting for us when state aid comes out. It's not a lightning bolt. It's just we're, again, like Matt very eloquently said, we're kicking the ball down. We're just kicking the can. But the fact that we closed Garfield, we're going to be able to sell that property. That's some income that will help somewhat. We are being audited. We just closed the books. We're ahead of schedule, which is phenomenal. I will have more surplus to go into the next school year than I had this past year. I don't want to get too excited about it because the auditors still kind of have to go through it, but I definitely generated more in this past school year than I did the year before, which is good news. So that's something thumbs up, good news. So you've got 2 things that we will have in our favor going into the budget cycle that will help us if the community doesn't embrace the question. But again, you're just kicking it for one more year. You're kicking it into 28. So, yeah, I hope I answered your question. I mean, it's a sobering thought. I guess we've done too good of a job managing what we have, but being creative in how we close our holes, like we're selling a property, we're closing a school. But there's only so many of those things we can do, and I think I'm at that point. Like there's really no other rabbits we can pull out of the hat. So we just have to really convince this community that this is necessary.
But can I just ask Matt's question one more time? What does it look like if it doesn't pass? I'm really happy that we have Hail Marys coming to possibly help us, but what is it, right? Because I think that is important to say, this much cut, like, we just have to be really clear. I'm still not really clear does this look like? Because I, without a really clear answer,
So
I don't know that I understand
I understand what you're asking, and so we're going to have to, figure out a way to be direct with community members, without the impression of fear-mongering, but the reality is all of the items that students care about are the items that are on the chopping block. We don't have $3 million in fluff within the budget. I think that if we look historically, we've already cut roughly $5.5 million over the last 4 years out of the budget already. We've been able, year over year, to reorganize. We do not have the margin to absorb another multi-million-dollar reduction. And so I think we're going to have to be extremely clear. We're going to talk about it a little bit later this evening, but we, in a good faith effort not to distract within our community, we're going to see a fee increase in terms of athletics, but it is not a real pay-to-play for middle school. Next year, without additional funds, that option goes away. We would see a pay-to-play for all extracurricular activities, elementary, middle, and high school. All athletics would shift to pay-to-play. Athletics in our budget is about $1.25 million. It is not funded. And so if we are to keep those types of programs that we all agree are necessary for a well-rounded education for our students, the revenue would have to come from somewhere. And so without the additional revenue on the referendum side, it has to come locally, which places a disproportionate financial burden only on the students and families who actually participate, which would be significantly more than any referendum fee. And so that's one of the other things. We would also see significant reductions in value-added services and support above and beyond what the state defines as a thorough and efficient education. For example, social workers that are not connected to an IEP, those are value-added pieces that we in our local community believe are vital for the success of our students. However, they're not funded. Those are all local choices and local decisions based on what our community values and what our children need that we add into the budget in order to make it work. And so we would have to go back to the drawing board, and it would be extremely detrimental for our continued academic progress. And so I'm not trying to scare anybody. This is a math problem. This is not a people problem. It's a math problem. And without the additional minimum $3 million, it puts the district and all schools in a very vulnerable position.
I'll jump in also because I think what I learned from, I think, the previous referendum effort is that we do need to be very clear about the consequences of not being able to pass an investment in our schools. And so again, back to what Dr. Morales said, which is we need to think about our schools. We have a legal requirement, right, of thorough, efficient education. Anything beyond that is on the chopping block if we don't have additional revenue, because simply put, you cannot pay for it. If we cannot pay for it, we can't have it. And you know, while I think this is an extremely small chance that you would get this far, I know in the last few years, talking with other boards at other school districts, especially with these funding issues coming forth, one idea that has been floated, and this would be a cataclysmic solution, but it would legally save us a ton of money, is that we would not offer kindergarten because that's not legally required. Now, there's so many downstream effects of that, because if we don't offer kindergarten, we also don't get funding from the state for preschool, right?
Because
Yes.
part of participating in the preschool is
Right.
that you have full day K.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. So
Just so you
it's
know the
one-
ramifications of that.
Right, so like that is in a sense of it, you know, I think that's a really very, you know, I don't think that's something that we should be saying is coming. I don't think it is at all, right? But this is what we're talking about, downstream effects. If we do not raise revenue, that is the type of discussions that have legitimately been had between different boards about what are possible solutions that we have to explore and look at, because in the end, all we can offer is the legally required minimum if we don't have the funding to do so. So I put this out there to say, like, this is why it's so important.
And I think it's fair to just say that, though. Because if I think we are assuming we all, because the math of just extracurricular and athletics is not $3 million, so it's got to come from somewhere. And so we should be really specific about, we have to be okay saying what is possible, because it just is. I'm not suggesting we want to start with kindergarten and then pre-K, but we do need to be a bit more specific so people really understand the impacts of, frankly, what will feel like you're coming at the very last stitch to get
Right.
this
Yeah.
money.
And I would be remiss if I didn't.
Kind of have a crisis, and it is a crisis at the moment, right? To not do it, we are not the same district.
Correct.
And I just think we have to be realistic about what that is, and it's just real. So that I guess, like, we
Yeah.
shouldn't shy away from what is possible.
I think we have to take it, and we do it every year, the administrative team, but we would have to really look at our class sizes again. I know everybody was upset because class sizes were going up, because we spread 113 kids to 4 campuses. I wouldn't say, the only class sizes that Trenton is really where there's code and statute around the size would be pre-K and K, or special ed. So every other grade is up for grabs. Personally, like my kids went through Cherry Hill, depending on the class, they were one of 40 kids, depending. I mean, I know you teach there, but like some of their classes, they would come home and be like, there's a lot of kids. But again, it's just, nobody wants that, but at the end of the day, there's no limit in some instances as to how many children you can have in a class. Obviously, I'm not an instructor, but I know the teachers will say there's an impact. You want to keep it below a certain number so every child gets attention, and I get that. But, I mean, that also has to be on the table, that there needs to be we need to look at class sizes across the board, because we make these decisions and we make these reductions year after year to have the minimal impact on instruction, right? So that it's fair and everything's evenly distributed and da-da-da, but I think that's always one of the first places I look. I mean, because I know Fred has said it a bunch of times, I mean, 80+% of our budget is people. So if we have a $3 million problem, what's 80% of 2 that's it, $2.6 million of it's people. Not things. We don't have a lot of things in our budget. We have a lot of people in our budget. We value all of them, but when we have a problem of this size, we really have to start looking at things like that. I mean, like Fred said, you don't want to fear monger, but if the point is to say this is what we're at that point, this is what we're looking at. We looked at it last year, we looked at it the year before, but all the decisions we made was to make it least impactful on instruction, as my understanding of the exercises that we sat in with the administrative team. But class size would have to be on the table again.
So let me add some additional context. And so, because, for anybody that is watching, this is not a new problem. This is a 13-year problem. And so we went into structural deficit in 2013. And so we've had this problem for 13 years. And so what we've been able to do is we've been able to use tight fiscal controls from 2013 up to 2020 to be able to generate enough surplus to be able to float a million to a $1.5 million deficit. That deficit expanded dramatically post-pandemic, coming back from the pandemic. The operational costs were dramatically higher. Add the inflationary costs, add cost of living increases rightfully deserved for all of our employees, and it generates an annual operating increase of about $4 to $5 million per year, with the ability to increase taxes about $475,000. There's a hole that can't be filled with magical thinking. And so it's a math issue that we're really going to struggle with. without the additional funds, and I think what Zakia is asking for us to think about is conversations that have been put on the back burner due to the discomfort within the community, like grade level configuration or reconfiguration. It gets more and more difficult to not have that discussion, which could include the closure of an additional school. And so I don't want the perception to be that we're trying to scare folks. It's that when we start the budgetary process, we start the budgetary process in October. We go line by line to make sure that any and all decisions that we make are the least disruptive option to the students that we have. And so we've been able, in some years, to be able to generate additional revenue. For one, we aggressively went and pursued state and federal grants when they were available. That was $7 million that we were able to get to actually kick the can down the road. It gave us 2 years. Last year, at the last minute, based on just the sheer magnitude of the deficits statewide, they allowed a one-time tax levy incentive program, which we requested $6.1 million. We only received 3.9. And so, but there were 150 other districts that were having the exact same problem. That was not afforded to us this past year. The actual reductions that we had, when we started this process, I believe we shared with you at the beginning of the budgetary season in October, we were $7 million in the hole. We were able to make some executive decisions to immediately begin removing certain costs in order to chip away at that. First, we took all of the grant funding, we took that off the top. That reduced it by $2 million. Our finance team was able to successfully negotiate with Woodland and Oakland to take a multi-year reimbursement payment for tuition because the tuition numbers were offset. That reduced it by about $600,000. And so just 2 decisions reduced our deficit by $2.6 million. We also looked for targeted operational efficiencies for infrastructure investments that we just couldn't justify. Things like a full array of curriculum. We asked our curriculum team to go back and look at multi-year implementation because we couldn't justify a $300,000 to $400,000 curriculum expenditure while we had to lay off teachers. And so all of those core things were all done before we started the budgetary process because our goal has always been and will continue to be to make sure it's the least disruptive option for students and that we're showing that we're focused on retention of our dedicated faculty and staff. The net lack of local investment based on the state funding formula. We didn't create the funding formula, and so good, bad, or indifferent, the gap between local fair share is $4.6 million this year. It'll be over $5 million next year, based on what the state is expecting the local community to contribute. I am not saying that our community are not doing what they're supposed to do, but we are having to respond to a funding formula that says that what we're currently doing is just simply not enough.
So I would like to hope that we, as a board, can approach this a little bit differently than the last referendum was. And I think really we can be very broad and very direct because I, as a taxpayer voter, I want to say, so on the average home, 1311 is $109.25. Tell me, so I can tell the community, and once we get to the point, I'm not saying right now, but what am I getting, what am I keeping, even if I'm not bringing anything back, what am I keeping for $109.25? Am I keeping sports in the middle school, in the high school? Am I keeping social workers? And I want, like, let's just, I literally picture like a big poster with all these line items with dollar amounts that equal up to $4.5 million and saying, this is what we are trying to do. We are trying to keep all of these things and and the average home is paying less than $110. And I'm not saying that that's not a large amount of money, and I'm not saying people are not struggling, but I want to see, very simple, I know this is important, I know that we have been struggling for years. I just want to see what we're doing, what we can do, what we're asking, what am I getting for my money? It's easy for people at the table to say, or people in education possibly to say, you know, certain things. Let's tell the general public, what are we getting for $110? Because that's how we're going to change people's minds. That's how we're going to build trust with our community, and that's how we're going to get people to vote yes. Not by saying, we're not sure what this is going to look like. We're not sure what your money is going to. We can't assess certain things. I just really hope that we can approach it by, this is what we're keeping. This is not what we're not losing. Maybe we can bring this back, even if we don't even mention anything that can be brought back. What is not going to be eliminated with 4.5 million? And show me sports 1.5. Awesome, take that. We have $3 million and we can always put the caveat of, obviously things can change, obviously prices increase, but let's just go to basics and just put it out there of, this is what we're trying to save in Collingswood, and that's how I think we're going to get the vote. Put the price out there, put what we're keeping, what can stay here, and let's push that as a campaign kind of thing, because that's what
full disclosure, was part of the last referendum that failed so miserably, but maybe some lessons that can be learned from that process and how painful it was, that we can go and say that, but then if in negotiations for raises, the teachers come back and say, well, you just got all this money, so we're gonna bump ours up 1%, and now these things that we promised that we're gonna come back, we can't do, because we're gonna look at 2 years of teachers sitting out and saying, you got this more money and we want it, which they can argue for, they can negotiate around that, but these are the things that you'll have to weigh. So like when you talk about trust, if we come out and say that something's gonna be a part of it and we don't actually know, and then something comes that takes away our ability to do that, then there's no trust.
and put it something different, salaries, you know, like, but we can't
Salaries
not give.
will have to be on there, but salaries might be
We
all
can't
of
not
it.
give a list of what we're getting. No one's gonna vote for it. I wouldn't vote for it. I wanna know what I'm getting for my money, and I think the public deserves to know, with those conversations also public and open, that these can change based on, and let people know. Like, people don't know, and it's their job to know, and their responsibility, but regardless, talking to people, they don't know. So, we have to know what we're getting, and the options of what we're.
And I understand that, but it is part of, you have to educate people on the fact that we don't know from year to year what exactly is going to be in the budget. But you've been on here for years, like, we've had to make these hard choices and these changes every single year. Like, we want to be able to say that, like, other than following the law and saying the things that we have to operate, and we can say where our values are and where we think we're going to put, it's hard to guarantee things. Like, I would have said that we would guarantee we were going to have the wellness center. And I would have thought that we would have. There was a change in the government where we can't apply for that. That money was all gone, and nobody else is putting anything out that has anything attached to those 3 letters, as we know. Like, they're making long-term promises on things with this money is very difficult.
Both of you have very fair points to make. I think it's important to say that these are our plans and this is what we intend to bring back, and try to be as specific as we possibly can, at least in the short term. We know that we're going to be able to keep these things, but the reality is that we also don't know, and there's a lot of unknown factors there, that things can change and cause a disruption in our plans, and we don't want to put out such direct messaging to the community without a definitive way to keep those things. I get that. You both have really
And
good
you
points.
guys
But there's got to be
you
a
did the
balance somewhere.
survey and you got all the results back.
Yeah.
Would you say there was a consensus of thought in there as to where all the money should go based on the survey results?
I think it was pretty clear that I think I will say one thing, we probably shouldn't even offer that things are coming back, is my general frame. It's maintenance of what we currently have is the reality. Because those areas were identified because those are what we perceive everybody really wants, a wellness center. Like, we all think, well, what does that really mean? Are people really prepared to spend $500,000 for that? No. Because the version that we've articulated, we've recovered, seems to be sufficient, right? And so I think we also have to temper and clarify, what do we mean? Is the wellness center a $500,000 program, or is it a person who coordinates social workers? They're very different things. And so I do think, and hold the frame even here as we're discussing things, like our next topic, we already are walking into a hole and spending money we don't already have, to your point, right? Like, we have to be really prudent of how we are articulating what that thing is. So like support staff, saying it's an additional person for $110,000, not many people are like, yep, we need a lot of those people now. They suddenly got really like, you don't do you really need, what does that even mean to you? And so we all have to kind of be clear on what do we mean we want to maintain and sustain in this district versus what we think everybody's saying they want, for lack of a better word to use. And I think one thing that we've heard at roundtables is folks want to see the impact, so performance and outcomes are improving. And that's the only thing we can maybe hang our hats on, that this investment, I'll use for instance, full rollout of curriculum will help us reduce the gaps that we are seeing, which we could argue, is that a better investment than the people? I don't know, but I'm prepared to, I feel like we have to start to make those decisions and have those conversations. I think we've talked about trade-offs, but we need to be really specific about what they mean and look like, because I will say this last year, even the stuff we've talked about, what the Wellness Center is going to be and what it was funded to be are things that people really didn't experience. Even the full gestalt never got stood up, but people have this version of Wellness Center in their mind that we have to really define and make sure we're clear about. I do have trepidation knowing we're going into a contract negotiation that we will essentially can't just take all the extra to sustain, right? We could be at 4 and just sustain. And maybe that's, I was gonna ask us to think about what are we most comfortable with, in particularly around, as a board, we have to be unified in what we're asking the community to do. And is it to sustain? Because we know we can do that with whatever the number is. But to grow, I feel like, to Matt's point, might catch us in a way that we really should be cautious about saying we're adding stuff back. So just want to ask if anybody's lying one way or the other.
Take a look at the question I drafted too. I mean, feel free to wordsmith me. I bet, preserve instructional programs, maintain staffing levels. Maybe we define what that is. How many staff, how many teachers, how many, like maybe that's where you quantify the people. I don't know, but like seriously wordsmith this. Like this is how I talk, but that might not be how the average person talks, but wordsmith, like maintain staffing levels, support student services, we can probably better define that. Sustain current educational programs, we could probably list out what those are. Not like in the question, obviously, but like on it, like you said, like on a one-pager. But wordsmith that, because I'm kind of at a crossroads. I understand exactly what Maggie's saying, because there's people that don't have kids in schools and don't get it. But I know what Matt's saying, because I have been in that crosshair, right? You know, you plan and then something comes up and I can't tell you what I promised, and I don't want to be disingenuous to the taxpayers at the same time. But I think the words we use and maybe how we define the words in whatever flyer, maybe that's time very well spent, perhaps. I don't know.
I think that's a great point. Can I also ask, if we go for the middle option, which is the one that you recommended, does that really sustain us?
It's hard to predict into the future. If I had that money this year, we would have been fine. That I can say. If I had the $3 to $3.5 million, we would have been fine this year. We didn't have it, so obviously we cut. I would like to say yes. It's really hard because I can only estimate so far out, not knowing what the governor's going to do with the funding formula.
Right.
But I'd say probably definitely for a year or two, probably. If I could sustain generating sustainable fund balance. But again, it's hard. Like, I just need a couple kids to move in.
Right.
And
if that
my
doesn't
budget
happen,
goes to,
right, yeah. Or we lose
but like I
it.
said, like, I guess the better question, like, if I had that $3 million this year, we wouldn't have had to cut. And then that $3 million would have generated additional tax levy, and then the snowball kind of gets rolling, and then our tax levy, the 2% is bigger, obviously, when you add an additional $3 to $4 million to it, right? It's probably another couple $100,000. No, 100, 70. Okay.
So can I just, sorry. One, I was looking at the results again. Overwhelmingly, everybody supports sustaining, maintaining that table stakes, staff, right? Like that's what and I am a little confused, concerned, I'm not sure what word to use, that we would have been okay if is literally, now I'm not sure. We definitely need this to maintain the individuals who are currently staffed. It has to be pretty clearly yes or no, because if there's a gray, then it's gonna be, well, then maybe you can figure it out again one more year. Like, I wanna make sure we're really precise. Not because I don't, I hear you, and like, the general public who is not doing this and not paying attention to this level of detail can't hear us say, well, maybe it could work. That, like, right, just, anybody up the street who hears this conversation will go, so do you really need her to do that? That, like, I think that's where.
But it's hard, but again, I don't have a crystal ball to know what's going to happen. You know, so that's why I said, if I had the 3.5 million this last budget year, we wouldn't have had to cut. You would have, the sustaining would have happened this year. The growth would have happened in 27, 28. We cut 3+ million, and you know, but again, there's a very large piece of the puzzle that I don't have an answer to, and that is what's going to happen with state aid. I mean, mathematically, right now, like if you ask me to predict right now, yeah. But like I said, the rate of health benefits, and I don't know what the teachers are going to be asking for, so I don't want to, and I'm being cautious, I don't want to say, yes, we're going to be 1,000% good and we're going to be good for the next 5 years, because that's just, I know that's not right, and that's disingenuous to anybody who's listening. Anybody who knows math knows that things are increasing at an astronomical rate. And I did started the meeting with saying we are selling a building, so we will have a little revenue from that, and that I do have additional fund balance. So, yeah, for 27, 28, I can estimate we're going to be in a way much better position than we were this current year, because we have, if this passes, and we have all the 2 other items of revenue that I talked about. But those other items of revenue, like the sale of the building, it's a one-time shot, right? Once it's gone, it's gone. I can't generate whatever that dollar amount's going to be again. Same thing with fund balance. You don't want to rely on savings, because if you have a bad year, you don't have it. So I need a sustainable way of generating a consistent dollar amount for fund balance, so that we're not dipping every year. That's why I'm hedging on the answer, because I don't want to be incorrect.
Can I offer like a sort of metaphor? So I used to work at an education research organization, and one of the things you learn is a lot of times, if you want a very firm answer about if something works or not, you don't ask the researcher, because the researcher knows all of the caveats, right? So I say that because I think maybe as our job as a board is for us to go out and to simplify the message, right? Where I totally understand where Beth Ann's coming from, where there are so many different skills and toolbox and whatever in her toolbox, and there's so many variables that we don't know what's happening, right? That it's really, hard to say for certain now. But us as a board, our job is to sell and to tell the story, right? Not tell necessarily the science, but the story to the community.
For sure. I think maybe I'll ask my question for the board today, because we, in August, need to come up with what question are we bringing back? And is it one of, and I'm going to keep it super simple, growth or maintenance? And just being really simplistic in that frame, so that we can do the work of getting some of the details we need, because you can't serve both really well. And so, like, which one do we think we're well positioned for a definite yes, right? Like, that's really, because we can update the question to a lower number, like, we can keep adjusting it and knowing our floor, but what one do we have? That makes a lot of sense, and it's an easy button. We should have a sense of where we are around this. I think it's our job now to be able to sell that framework, if that makes sense.
And it seems like, Maggie, something you were talking about, and I think Matt and all of y'all have been talking about, is that I think the general idea is that we need to make the amount of money like tangible, right? Because I don't know about you, but $3 million doesn't mean anything to me, right? So like being able to make that tangible. I wish, but anyways, being able to make that tangible, right? To folks, right?
It doesn't mean anything. Can I have it?
Yeah, right. But you know, I think that, Zakia, your point about are we maintaining or are we adding to, I would argue in many ways that all of these options we have in front of us are all about maintaining. And I think perhaps, you know, one thing that we should be honest with the community about when we're coming out with this is that, and I think it might resonate given how important this was to the community over the last couple of years, right, is that if we want to maintain our staff, we also need to plan for year-over-year raises, right? And so I think at a minimum, when we're looking just at the teaching staff, we have to be thinking about an additional, at a minimum, 700,000 to maybe like 1.1 million per year in order to maintain our teaching staff just there, right? And I think being honest about that and understanding how the community values that, I think might be a really important thing for us to put front and center about the benefit of being able to bring in this revenue.
And just to Matt's point about maybe it's not the best idea to put this as sports where we want to maintain, but if we at least tell the public, this is what it costs for a sports program. You know, let people know so they can also see the tangible line item of social workers. Like, we don't have to have this. This is what it costs us. We don't have to have sports. This is what it costs us. Again, goes to something tangible that if we lose, it's going to have a huge impact, and all of a sudden people are going to start paying attention. So those that maybe like just changing it, this isn't what we're trying to keep or maintain or bring back, but this is what it costs, and these are the risky things that we will lose if we don't pass this.
I think to add on to that and to connect it to your earlier kind of push for transparency and concreteness, I think that one of the things that Beth Ann was trying to speak to earlier is that unlike many other professions and lines of work, we wait every winter to see what our funding availability will be for the forthcoming budget. And that's very unusual for many other lines of work. I just had a conversation with a community member who was like, that is a very bizarre way to understand and budget. And I said, I understand, yes, and that is what the model is. And so I think it's for folks who are not in education, that can seem to be such an odd way to go about planning for the future, and yet it is what the model is, at least in the state of New Jersey at the present moment. And so I just wanted to name that is a factor at play here. And I think to your the way that you just framed it most recently, of like just stipulate this is what these things cost, and if we value these things, then I think that's a more concrete way. Yes, I think it's a more concrete way to get at the spirit of what you were aiming for earlier without projecting an unknown in the future.
So I have a question. If we went like the pie in the sky one, like the 4 million to 4.5 million, and that got voted down, can we then go out for the revise and go for the lower one? Okay.
We go out for 6 million.
Well, the thing is, you said that kind of flippantly, but to the point that you just made, into something that Dr. McDowell said earlier, there's not an option on here that allows this district to grow, even the high to grow. So even the highest one that Beth Ann's presented here is really maintenance. Dr. McDowell did just say, okay, our current local fair share gap is $4.6 million. Do we have any belief that gap is going to close at all in the next year?
No, it's probably going to get worse.
At all, no, but even
Each year when they pop in the new property values.
So, okay, so to that point, if we already know that roughly that we think the gap is going to be 5 million next year, then I would argue that going for anything less than at least what the current gap is, if not what the projected gap is for next year, is, and I understand that it may get voted down, but all we're doing by going with a lower amount is setting ourselves up to have to go for another referendum sooner rather than later. It's kicking the can down the road.
And so, and I was gonna ask, because I think our initial thought was go with like a 5 or 5, not, and 6 is like super healthy. Sorry, I should have been clearer. Like the 4 is the minimum threshold in this equation, because we already know there's a gap that is greater than the options here. So And that gap is to sustain what we have, right? So that's the frame that I was offering versus like 6 could help you add some more potentially when we were initially talking through this. It's really, are we concerned about the the dollar per month? Is that the sensitivity we're trying to get ourselves around? Like, is 5 so much more that it's non-negotiable?
Right, like, do we go out for a lower amount knowing that we're going to have to go out again, right? Like, in the
And
very
I struggled
near
with
future,
putting those
right?
numbers in there. I kind of was going where I always, like the last few years, we've been 3 to 4 million, 3 to 4 million, 3 to, so that's kind of where,
I think that's the question, though. I think that that's like, do we make it so that it's more digestible to the community, knowing that the message is going to be, we're making it digestible,
You
but we're
need
gonna
to,
have to go out
you need
again.
to say that,
Right.
Right.
because you have to,
Right.
yeah, that, it has to be, fine, we went for a lower amount, so this increase is gonna be a little more palatable, but we're gonna have to go out again in another year or two.
That's
for
what I'm
another
saying.
one.
Do we have to make it, do we
it's
make it
us-
more digestible and then say, we're making it more digestible now, so, but we're gonna have to do this again? Like, what do you guys wanna do? Do you wanna go out, shoot for the
and
moon
it's-
now, or what
It's
do you
also
wanna do?
like betting what we think people, what will resonate more, right? Is keeping that number, that monthly number, right, smaller, more important for people, or is it actually kind of like that fool's errand where, in fact, if we were to invest more, bring in more, we could concretely say, we are bringing this in, we are with this concretely larger amount of money, we are like, this is what we can bring back, right? We can fully staff a wellness center, for example, right?
My-
Maybe that would resonate more than just saying, here's amount.
My
Right,
gut
but that would
tells
be
me-
a much bigger number,
I
probably.
mean, based on all of the feedback that we've gotten from the community and the roundtable discussions and things like that, and just all of us talking to people and talking to each other, I think my gut tells me that right now we have a pretty motivated community that wants to take some action and wants to get involved and wants to do something. So I think that it's probably, in my opinion, it would be a safer bet to shoot for the moon at this moment, because I think that, you know, if people see that it's more digestible, number-wise, monthly-wise, that might be something that they are comfortable with, but in the future, they're going to think, well, we're okay with this now. They may not see what is gonna have to come eventually if we give them a small increase, right? Do you know what I mean? And if the taxes increase by a small amount, but then we go back again, people may not come back again for a second time because they might be comfortable with what they have and not see what's gonna happen if they don't do that. So, in my opinion, it's probably better to go as high as we can possibly go. But we also need to worry about the fact that we have people in this town that that's an issue for them, right? It's gonna be expensive, and we have to factor into that into our messaging as well.
So I guess some of the costs we know we've most recently approved, having to make sure we have enough to cover maintenance of new fields and other things that, like, if, like, we do have to account for in some capacity, right? We can't bank on the sale of Garfield to cover, we kind of need to have that in reserves for other upcoming future facilities maintenance and not spend it on staff. So I actually really want to try to ask us to hold the line. Like, we do have a forthcoming future expenditure. We need to start putting money away for maintenance of fields and all that stuff that are just different and bigger than the ones we have today. So that's what I do think going bigger is may not be, it's things we're bringing back, but I think we've heard, tell us how long we're good. Like, if we can say this is 5 years, I am concerned if we go for a number that means every single year we're asking for more. That just does not feel prudent.
Zakia, I would agree that because of the community forums that we held all April and May with regard to the Garfield closure, getting to speak to each elementary community, I do think we're in a moment right now in the borough where there's a greatly increased awareness of the state funding model, the local tax levy, how it all integrates or doesn't integrate. And so I do think there's an increased awareness in this specific moment of how it all works or doesn't work, and that perhaps we ought to try to capitalize on that, the awareness and the feeling of what happens when we don't have enough money to operate.
You,
I
also,
did run some numbers if you guys are interested. 5 million, it would be $1,420. That's $118 per month. I should caveat all this by saying this current This is the current ratables. I get new ratables in January, so these are good through the fall.
Thousand what?
Sorry, 1,420. That comes to 118 per month. And then the 2% tax increase year over year with that increase would be an additional $100,000 to our budget, okay? The next, the $6 million, that's the shoot the moon that Kelly was referring to, is $1,637. 1,637, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. 1,637, and it comes to $136 per month. And that's a $120,000 increase in your year-to-year tax revenue going forward.
Thank you. I think those are important because if you're looking at the 4.4 to 4.5 between the five, I mean, that's less than $9. You know what I mean? So that is right there. I think that should be taken into consideration. We're jumping a little more to 6. I mean, I'm just trying to be like aware of people's financial abilities as well. But I think definitely 5 is probably the minimum amount that we should go for. Because the difference is, yeah, it really is a small amount of money.
I'm trying to remember from the bond from 2 years ago. Can you refresh our memories about senior citizens and some of the options that folks have who if they waivers and things of that nature? Can you refresh our memories around?
I'm not
those
I'm
folks?
not an expert on this, but there's the senior tax freeze, yeah, that they can apply for. Yeah,
And then there's a Jersey Care.
they're reimbursed. It's part of like their annual process.
And I think there's New Jersey Cares. There's
number,
something else about to help folks stay in New Jersey that's also out there. Thank you. I was like New Jersey Cares. Thank you. Stay in, Jack.
The other thing down the road, just to keep in the back of your minds, is the bond that's rolling off for the Breezeway in 29 or 30.
2030, that rolls off.
So, I mean, that rolls off, but at that point, I think you have facility projects that have been waiting to be addressed for that. So you hope that it can be a tax neutral, but it still is an ask of the community because there's roofs on buildings that need to be replaced, HVAC. I mean, I'm sure John's got a whole list of things that he could find use for that, but obviously not as much fun as other things, but critically important for the future of the district that we're able to reinvest in keeping these buildings going.
Yeah, and I certainly wasn't saying don't, but I didn't want the staff to be every year, and then how do we not have the two?
Not to say for anything else, I think go for it, but I also think too, if we went for smaller amounts that weren't closing the gap and then were causing cuts, and then we had to keep going back, you get into this thing of, well, you keep asking for more money, but then you can't do what you want to do with it, so no. And then, yeah, we're 4 years and even more trouble.
And I would say one of the important reasons why we need to go out for this money now too is so we can preserve the funds that that the district can get through selling of Garfield, right? Because you don't really want to use surplus for year-over-year costs because it actually exacerbates the issue in the future, right? Like, I put in $3 million extra from surplus this year. I don't have that next year. Now I'm like $6 million, right, in the hole essentially. So it's even worse the following year. So being able to preserve that surplus to then help and expand the amount of infrastructure work we can do at a lower tax burden in, say closer to 2030, I think is really important. But this is like that first step in getting there.
I mean, ideally, if this can get us to 2030, it just is a very different story, right? Like, the narrative just is different. And so that's the Hail Mary energy we're giving it.
Okay, so what are next steps then? So,
Should we raise hands about numbers where
Yeah,
you
I
guys
guess
are
if we're
comfortable,
on
and then
the
we
same
can?
page on the ballpark. 5. Thumbs up. All right. Okay. There we go. It's not an actual vote, so it's just like a
Yeah,
budget.
it's just a 15. We kind of get a feel.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah. So next meeting, we're gonna get the wording, right? The question itself, and the question itself is to get us $5 million. Or what?
Next meeting, we have to vote on the
word,
language
sorry.
and the number.
Okay,
Basically,
let me
what
ask it
the
this
package
way.
that gets sent to the
Can,
county.
can I get
That's
it,
what I'm
can I
saying.
get a show of hands of how many of us would be comfortable with 5 as a minimum? Can I, okay, can I get a show of hands of how many of us would be comfortable extending that to 6 as a maximum? Okay, so,
Just explain, I'm a little less comfortable with the 6 because the jump is so high per month. I'm just thinking about our
I was
taxpayers.
looking at the
and-
same
yeah.
thing,
Yeah,
many moons ago before anybody was on here,
yeah.
and I was a renter, and they went for referendum. Many of my neighbors and everyone were against it. Back to what Maggie was saying, like, I don't know what's happening in the school, and I don't know all this, lingo back then, and that's from 1420 to 1637 as a renter. As a single mom with 6 kids, that would have killed me, and that's why the referendum, we shot down back in the day, because we couldn't afford it. That's a big hike for me. I'm not that now, but there's a lot of people that
Yeah,
are
there-
in that
yeah,
situation.
there are- yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I do agree with the momentum in riding that now, because the public, our Gen Pop here, is very aware of what's going on, but I think we should be saying, hey, if this does get passed, we're at least not gonna lose stuff, we're at least not gonna lose this.
is
I
it
just
right?
think that's a
Yeah.
big hike for me.
Okay, so let's
Agreed.
just, all right, so that's fine. So let's just say 5 and a half? Okay.
Let me run the number.
Can I get a show of hands of how many of us would be comfortable going in the middle at 5 and a half?
Let me run the number.
Yeah,
Before you guys commit, I just want to make sure I'm giving you the right information.
I mean, it's just going to be in the average of those two numbers, so 50.
1528.
Yeah, there you go.
It says $1,528.
And what would that be per?
Okay, so can I ask another question? So my next question would be, if we go for about, all right, well.
127 a month.
Okay, so let's go back to that, 127 a month. Can I get a show of hands of how many would be comfortable with 5 and a half? As a maximum?
Look,
Yeah, but we wanted the numbers first, so we have it now.
Yeah, I just wanted you guys to have the,
Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, Beth Ann, can you give us the difference monthly between 5 and 5.5, please?
118 versus 127, so $9. Yeah. So it's like the jump you were talking about before between 4 and 5, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Again,
so here's.
there's only a $9 difference, and I'm not saying the $9 is not important. I don't want anybody to get that wrong, but between 5.5 and 6, we're talking $9 a month.
So I'm gonna offer space for those who are like being really intentional and just putting on the hat of like the space I work in. January is gonna be a really tough month for some families in having health insurance, maintaining their ability to keep their kids covered. So that $9 does actually tip some scales. 5 is, we all got there. So I think it's just something to think about, as we know folks will be anticipating. October will be the first month. Families will know if they're maintaining their eligibility for Medicaid. So things to just know outside of this arena, life is going to be really changing for some people. So those are just things to think about.
So my next question is that if we go with 5, projected range, how long will we be good for? To be able to maintain what we have now?
I'll jump in here because I know that Beth Ann is like
I-
all the
I'm just-
calculations are going on in her head, right?
I'm just
but-
looking at a range. Like,
Right.
you don't need to give me like an exact,
So maybe
2 to
if
3 years,
maybe if
okay.
I can like offer some context there, so Beth Ann doesn't have to look at all the different calculations.
Roger's on my knees.
But I would say look, we have to think about it this way, right? This year our health insurance increase was 1.2 million.
Yeah.
Right? Now, hopefully, there will be some changes in law. I think they're already putting some stuff in right now that will maybe help us with that, right? But let's just bet on $1 million a year of increase in healthcare. Let's bet on $1 million a year in increase in salaries. So we're looking at $2 million per year. That's just basic what we need to maintain people, right? And then so then right now we're bringing about $400,000 per year additional in our 2% tax levy. If we bring 5 million, we're talking about $500,000 additional per year. So we're looking at the very bare minimum, we're looking at 1.5 million additional per year just to maintain the staff that we have, right? So I say that because then you can kind of extrapolate that out. There's other increases, right? If we can't get oil through the Strait of Hormuz, we're all screwed. And at that point, right, all bets are off.
No, you're right, I probably forgot, we
But
hit,
like, we're looking at
utilities got hit
inflation,
this year,
right?
too.
So
Yeah.
maybe just very basically, let's say we're all very tight, buckle ourselves up. I would say bet on 2 million per year, right? So you look at $5 million, 2 to 3 years.
And hopefully by then we'll have a new funding formula.
And so that's
Meredith
really,
did ask
But
me,
in
like,
2 to 3
when
years
would she
gets
tackle
you-
it, and I've heard from legislators, like,
gets you
after her
2030.
first year.
yeah, well,
So like
and
ultimately,
you're trying to
we're
buy.
trying to buy a little time here.
Right.
And so if you can get to a neutral position by 2030, then that is different.
And also not to be
Understood.
not to be crass, but like we're also trying to buy enough time for other districts to catch up to us, right?
Oh, 100%.
Because our local fair share, we pay a smaller portion of our local fair share than almost all of Camden County. So we are a year or two ahead of everyone else in terms of cuts. But all the districts around us are starting to face these exact same cuts, just a year or two behind us, right? We need to buy ourselves time for enough districts across the state to catch up to us in terms of the pain. That builds up enough demand at the state level for them to then start their multi-year process to fix these things, because the math literally says that this is not forever. Like what we're doing right now will only get us so many years, right?
Yeah.
But that's really, we got to buy that time.
In an effort to move on, if nobody has anything else about the operating referendum, I would like to discuss the pay to play. Are we okay moving on?
So are we putting forth the 5.5?
Not right at this moment, but like I think we're, go ahead.
I guess let's finalize.
I heard 5 for sure,
Everybody
5.5 was
supported
iffy.
5.5 felt like a stretch. It could
Yeah.
be.
I thought I saw 50-50 on the hands, but I wasn't sure.
Was the stretch? No, 5 point.
Could I see 5.5
Okay,
again?
so let's do show of hands for 5 point, because I think we need to leave clear on amount. And
I
what
agree, because
our
I need to
message
get
is. So
everything
let's
ready
do-
for you.
Okay, can I get a show of hands of how many of us would support 5.5?
5.5, is that it?
Okay, all right.
Beth Ann, can you also just send out, and I know that's back of the envelope math, ratables can change, those numbers and things can change. but
Yeah,
if
what
you
I'll
could
do
just
is
send us
tomorrow morning
that.
I'll update in the executive content, I have like the options. I'll put the $5 million and the dollar amount and the 5.5 in the dot. So you guys have literally everything in front of you in one place.
One other question, Beth Ann, from process perspective, you want our feedback on the proposed wording by what date? Because I guess we have the number, so we
Yeah,
generally
because
ballpark.
we meet like August 24th.
It's the last
That's
moment you
and
can
so the
get-
committee of the
exactly.
whole would be the week before.
Yeah, so
So
I'm ju-
before the committee of the whole, yeah.
Yeah, so,
So,
I
August
guess can we?
10th-ish?
Okay, so August 10th, if you have wordsmithing, send it to Beth Ann. Yeah, you're good
Yeah,
with
see if
that?
you're okay with like the way, yeah,
So
again.
that's the ask is by the 10th, we send feedback on the word, the ballot, how it will read, so that we're talking about it in August, at committee of the whole.
And another clarification, just to make sure, I know that some of these referenda laws have requirements that it be about bringing in new or additional services. Are we able to write and propose a referenda that is about maintaining of services?
Yeah,
Robbinsville's
that was the Robbinsville model.
That's okay. So
Their wording was all made.
so all of it's okay.
Yep.
Great, awesome.
Okay, so now I would like to move on to discuss the pay to play. So one of you guys, I'm going to pass it off to you to go over this. Fred, Beth Ann, Meredith.
You sent everybody the stuff, right, Fred? Okay, so just to bring everybody up to speed on what we've been doing, we asked for feedback from the middle school. Middle school staff, the administrative team, we've met several times trying to tackle this. I'm trying to pull up my spreadsheet. We came up with several options for the community, and then what we decided last week. Hold on, I'm trying to pull it up. I think Fred sent you guys where we landed. I have to find it though. I apologize. I was in taxes. Okay, so yeah, Fred sent everybody an email. We redid the form. We do have a board policy number 2436. That was, I think we did that back in 2010, way before COVID when we first started. So that board policy set the minimum at $100. So we wanted to be consistent with the board policy. So the existing activity fee requires elementary through grade 12, and elementary would be for the 3 activities for elementary school: band, orchestra, and chorus. And then for middle school and high school, co-curricular and sports. We're recommending middle school students who participate in athletics or performing arts be charged an additional $125 for each individual activity. And the payment deadline would be before they participate in their first practice, rehearsal, meeting, or activity session.
Sorry, Beth Ann, did you say the minimum of 100 in the policy?
Yes.
Because I'm reading maximum in the policy. Am I?
Which
The policy is up 2436.
Yeah, 2436, the one that's linked there.
Oh, you're right. It does say maximum. This is a very old policy. Right.
So the way that the policy reads is that there is, so the participation fee is separate and apart from the individual activities. And so the participation fee was originally created in order to offset some of the extracurricular that are provided that are not funded by state funding. And so we read through it multiple times, and basically also in the policy it says each individual activity fee will be determined by considering the district's cost to operating, not limited to coaching, equipment, facilities fees, and so on and so on. And so the participation fee is simply, that's the base participation fee for any and all students participating in extracurricular activities in general. We made no recommendations for any changes to that because it would require a change in board policy. And so what we've done is we've just articulated what the existing policy is, which is the participation base fee of $100 only for those students participating in activities. And so, for example, grades 4 and 5, orchestra, band, and chorus. In middle school, it would be clubs and co-curriculars. The individual activity fee is what we're proposing is where the additional revenues in order to offset that $150,000 deficit begins. And so at the middle school level, we would be students that participate in one of the middle school sports would pay, if they're a student athlete, they would pay the base participation fee of $100 plus $125 for each individual activity that they participate in. So if they participate in the spring and fall sports, it'd be $125 for each of those plus the participation fee, which would be $350. At the high school level, we are only proposing collection of the participation fee, but adding an additional layer of accountability because where we have seen a significant gap is the lack of actual collection of the participation fee. And so, because we made the local decision to fund high school athletics, the only thing that we would be doing at the high school level is collecting the established fee that's been around for the last 15 years. Middle school, because that's what we talked about, because middle school was unfunded, we added the fees for middle school this year. But that does not close the $150,000 gap. And so what we talked about during the referendum is that we also were trying to be mindful as not to distract from the real initiative, which is what we talked about for referendum, which is the $5.5 million, which is a more important number. And we know that by adding some tight fiscal controls, actually collecting the participation fee that's already in existence and utilizing some additional one-time revenues that come in, we should be able to reconcile by the end of the year the gap for middle school athletics without denying students the opportunity to participate in middle school athletics. We did not want the individual activity fee to be so overwhelming that we see a dramatic decrease in overall middle school student participation, which, when we priced it out, in order to get to the $150,000, a student that's participating in multiple sports would be spending $1,500 to participate.
So just so I'm clear, there's a policy for an existing participation fee 4 to 12, grades 4 to 12. Well, right, well, band and orchestra, don't they, and chorus start in 4th grade?
Technically, it's K to 12, but we don't
Okay.
offer anything
So
K to
are
3.
we collect,
so
I
it's
guess
4
I'm,
and 4
I'm
and
trying
5.
to ground myself in, are we getting I actually am learning something new about the fee for 4 to 5. So, are we collecting these? Cause I think table stakes, are we even collecting it? Cause we just spent time talking about a referendum and a sale that's gonna offset this gap. Like, I get a little worried about our current collection rate.
Sorry, and I can
So-
address that. The collection rate, I did a little research, is abysmal. We were doing really great, then COVID hit. We weren't collecting from anybody for a few years, and then we came back, and then I can honestly say I don't know what happened. So I've actually, and I sent to the administrators today, and I can send it to you guys as well, but I came up with standard operating procedures on how we can go about, I'm sorry, my thing keeps going out, ensuring collection. Because that, I handle the money side, but somebody on the flip side has to check rosters and who's participating with the payment flags in the system to ensure that there's a check. So I actually did come up with procedures for all the different offices in the district, from the business office to the athletic director's office to, at the elementary level, the principal's office. Because again, it's only those, I don't know how many kids per elementary, maybe 10 to 12 per elementary for 4th or 5th grade that are participating in the band-related activities. But then the principals and the coaches and advisors.
Every kid, I guess the reason I'm saying,
So-
asking is those families don't, I will be one going into 5th who doesn't have a understanding that this is part of this expectation, and so we're gonna have families being nickel and dimed for like middle school down. I just am trying to understand how we're gonna bring families along around across the board, because
It's been poorly implemented post-COVID, but the forms that exist on the website, you have to dig for them. I'm not going to say they're hard to find, but the current activity fee form does reference elementary through high school, and it does refer to payment for certain things. You have to dig for it. It's not readily available, but it kind of is out there in the cyberverse. But again, post-COVID, there was no, so if you're a new family to Collingswood from 2021, 22 onward, you wouldn't know, because post-COVID, nobody picked it up and was doing it. So, like I said, I came up with standard operating procedures that we can hopefully implement at all the different levels to make sure that we are collecting, and then I have good information after a year of everybody playing their part to making sure that, things are being collected.
Part of the discussion, what we talked about during our last board meeting was making sure that we gave families enough lead time in order to be able to plan effectively. When we looked at the rates, just looking at recreational sports in Collingswood is more than what we're asking for folks to do for these extracurricular activities, which are not funded by the state funding formula. And so we wanted to put it out there for board members to be able to provide us feedback. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the things that students and families say that they value, we're able to continually maintain those things. But it is going to require for folks more actively participating and helping to invest in some of those activities.
So, I think it's a little concerning, we haven't collected this for 6 years, but regardless of that, moving forward, we have a really good plan. Thank you for all of this, because, I think it's just really good. I think it's a solid price point for people to not miss out on things. I love that we can provide a donation, spot for people to hopefully take advantage of that and donate. I think it's, my kids do a lot of activities, and this is still really feasible, so I hope that the community also feels that and understands that this, we have to start paying for some of these pieces. But I think we also should put some kind of communication out there about that should have been implemented but wasn't, because all of a sudden we're gonna give everybody base fees, additional athletic fees, referendum. So I just think we should be pretty clear on, maybe the misstep, or at least this is what we're doing moving forward to try to close the gap. And
Yeah, we have been collecting, just not to the extent that we should have. It's like, and again, if you're a parent that you've been paying all along, you you have to do it, so you go on the website and you look for it. So unless somebody's saying,
yeah, and
this
I also
has to
think we should
happen,
make it
do you know what I
more
mean? So-
accessible, because it really is hard to find, and there's no
Yes.
stopgap that says you can't move forward without paying. So I know that's
Yeah.
what we're working on, so I
Yeah,
appreciate
1000%,
that.
yep.
And then maybe we can put it on the website, just another spot, to.
Yeah, I met with the tech team today.
Yeah,
We're going to have
okay.
several places on the website where you can find the payment portal. It's going to be like, you're not going to, we met with tech under the drop-down menu. If you're a parent, the drop-down, right above where it says parent, you're going to hit here, so parents and students, we're going to have the payment portal there. Then we're going to have each individual school will have a link to the payment portal, because again, if I'm a Zane parent, I might not be going to the main district website. I might only have saved the Zane site on my phone. So we're going to have it in many places, so it's a little easier for people to find.
Can I also ask,
I haven't paid in other times because I'm like, oh yeah, I have to do this, and then I forgot about it, and then,
There's
it's
no
not-
follow-up,
yeah,
right,
there's just not
exactly. Nobody's
something
saying,
that
oh, hey,
triggers.
yeah.
So I appreciate that that is now being implemented,
So
and
the notice to families, so that they're aware that this is gonna be coming in, what does that look like? Is that gonna be a letter, an email that goes out, a text that goes out? Like, how are families gonna know that this is something that they're gonna have to follow through on?
We'll send out district-wide notification to all families this week, giving a little bit of background and pointing them to the specific spaces where they can actually do this. And so we're putting accountability measures in the student information system and the registration processes. We, in the past, have just not been great bill collectors at the site level, as evidenced by the challenges that we have had post-return from COVID just with lunch accounts. And so during COVID, for a 2-year period, everybody was free. We have had a very challenging time getting individuals who were not free and reduced to actually pay for their lunch accounts. And so, but the law is also very restrictive, where it ties your hands in your ability to actually collect. And so we're not allowed to carry a deficit with lunch accounts, but we're also not allowed to use specific measures to be able to actually collect the funding. And so We've been trying to figure out striking the right balance of communicating with families, working with our schools to solve this really challenging problem, but we've run out of the flexibility to give people more time to catch up with actually taking care of these financial responsibilities.
And on that, directly building off of what Fred just shared, we're hopeful that, as you can see from the drafted plan in front of you, for a family who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, you have a full waiver for the participation. And in order to access that waiver, we need a completed free and reduced lunch form. And so we're hoping that these things intertwine and help to give us the information we need on a lot of fronts that has been sometimes harder to acquire. And so we're hopeful that these things work together to serve kids well and to ensure families know what their options are if they qualify for that type of support. And so we're optimistic about those going hand in hand.
And as someone who does work in the social work field with people who get food stamps and free and reduced lunch, and battle with the Board of Social Services every single day, there are people that are denied food stamps, they're denied TANF, and they still are low income, and their kids still want to play sports and do choir and things like that. Where's that middle ground where we can help these children still be able to qualify for these programs, but yet they don't qualify with the state because they're kind of in that middle field where the state's saying no, or you didn't give me that information, or you know, come back in 30 days, or whatever it is, but the kids still want to participate.
Agree completely, and I was very, very, impressed to see the number of folks who responded to the survey that we put out back in early May. The overwhelming number of respondents said that they would absolutely contribute to help offset the funds of other students. And so I think that's not a complete answer to your question or your concern, but I do think we referenced it earlier here tonight that I would expect our community to step up in that regard. And they've expressed that they will do so via some formal feedback that's been submitted.
So when we discussed this, I guess that was a question that I'm still not sure. If a family is unable to, is there a mechanism for reaching out to say that this is too much or to do a partial payment? Because table stakes, we need to collect more table stakes. And so for everyone, but now it's even more. So I'm not suggesting, I just think while we can offset it, is there a way to just kind of anticipate a group that may be stuck? I also understand I have teams who support the same parents and families who are stuck in process. And how are we going to give them I'm assuming they'll have a mechanism for saying, like, this is where I've been and this is where we're trying to get to, but we're not done. Like, is that going to be easy to do?
I think also with saying, okay, you might not qualify, something on there where it says free and reduced lunch, you can qualify for services, discounted services, or you don't have to pay. But also, if you still cannot afford to pay, contact the counseling office, contact your school nurse or whoever.
As long as there's somebody who's responsible for feeling those things, then I think people at least can go there and ask the questions, even if they're not sure, and then that allows them to at least have ability to talk to somebody about it. So I think
Right,
those
we
are
have
good
to
questions.
say something to the
Yeah.
effect of, even
Yeah.
if you don't qualify for free and reduced lunch and you still need this option, there's someone you can talk to about that.
And I would also just add quickly, and then I think there was, coming out of this last year of middle school sports, kind of a lot of feeling from the kids and parents that there just wasn't going to be another team next year. So it's great that we're able to figure this out for something that's not going to be. I know the number that I had to pay for like travel soccer last year, and I know what we have to charge for Little League, and this is about where it ends up being for Little League for kids, particularly around that middle school age. So I know private music lessons as well. So it's competitive. I think we offer great services. I think the teams and performances and services are really, really well done, and people that are leading them care. And I think if we can put this in place and make it common, like just a common practice again, where people know and can expect it, then we'll be able to sustain these things longer term and not have to worry about, hopefully, like not have to have the discussion about cutting middle school stuff. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing out there once they get to a certain point in middle school if middle school sports go. Like, after-school activities, it's just, there's nothing. I think it's a huge value add for the community to have stuff that they can do, whether it's clubs, play, music, sports, that just, it keeps them engaged, keeps them doing things with their peers, and yeah, well, yeah, and honestly, though, like, keeping them out of trouble. So, and there's just not a lot of options in the community, and I think we are a major part of providing that.
Can I just make a suggestion to send out a reminder text, a couple of different times? Because I think if we're sending it out next week in the middle of the summer, people are still not thinking about that we need to set up like some sort of scheduled reminders that come out from the district. Yeah.
Potentially another suggestion, fully acknowledging that I don't know how you all are going to administer this, but I would suggest that if some family or some student is eligible for free and reduced price lunch, they're just automatically waived on this fee, right? So that, I don't know if the intention was to have another application required for these activity fees, but my suggestion would be, if they're eligible for this, for free reduced price lunch, just like automatically in Genesis or whatever, just mark them as good to go, to reduce their barriers for entry.
I've also seen that on Genesis, I mean, that is a great way to inform a family that your child has a fee on a book, or they lost a book, or they have some kind of an obligation. And I know as a parent, getting denied access to Genesis because you forgot to fill out the permission form for the Chromebook insurance back in the day or whatever. So yeah, Genesis is I think is a great way to just kind of keep it at the top of mind, not just for the parent, but for whoever's in charge of collection as well.
To that point, I think with Genesis, it's helpful to, I know we talk about this a lot in the beginning of the school year, that there's Genesis, and again, you can see this and you can see that, but there are parents that don't frequently check Genesis and don't know that these things exist. So another reminder of, hey, even if at the school level they send out notices saying don't forget to check Genesis and their s'mores and all that stuff, just so people get a reminder that they need to check it, because not everybody does. All right, are we good? Okay. So,
I can head into section 7 if you
I
want.
was going to say section 5 is other topics, not tonight. Section
Yeah.
6 is public comment. That is,
Do we have none?
well, I guess not tonight, but not
Well,
right now. Next.
Yeah.
Should we just exit committee of the whole and just do all the sections? 'Cause
Yep.
We're all here, like, there's no reason
That's
to have
fine. Yeah, can I have
separate.
a motion to exit
Yeah.
committee of the whole, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on to section 7.
I can handle, I know we have a meeting in August, but we have had a few things come in. So I just wanted to, being we had a meeting. So, item 7.01, we didn't get this on for the June. We got it on the Oakland agenda. We forgot to get it on Collingswood. We have to notify the county office every year if we're going to have certain educational spaces that require annual approval. So that's just allowing John and I to do that. Item 7.02, I issued the RFP for the engineer. That is on our website. And then 7.03 is I issued the RFP for appraisal services for the Garfield site. So they're on our website. Both should be submitted in enough time that hopefully we'll have people for the August agenda. So I didn't want to wait till August, and then I wanted to get it out. 7.04 is this, we're submitting the 2027 Perkins Secondary Consolidated Grant Application. Again, they needed a board approval date, so I didn't want to wait on that one. 7.05 is Dr. Hewitt does all of our psychiatric evaluations, but this is for a specific case. Again, we didn't want to wait. If we didn't have August, we would have just signed and went and brought it to you in August, but being we had the board meeting. So items 7.01 through 7.05.
When are the RFPs due?
They are due August, they have to be on the street for 20 days, so they are due, actually, see if I have it in my calendar, hold on. Oh, you know what, wait, I'll look on the website.
So we're going.
I guess in the meantime, I'll make a motion to past agenda items
That's what I was
of
gonna say.
7.01 to 7.05.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I?
Any second?
Yeah,
I'll second
hold on,
that.
can I back this up just a little bit? I feel like we did not give a space for public comment, just in case anybody wants to come up and say anything, if there's no one here, but I feel like we need to be formal about it, I don't know. Is that okay? What? Camera crew's good, okay. All right, so I'm gonna say that seeing as there is no one up for public comment before we vote, we are going to vote on the following items for section 7 and moving on. Okay, good. All right, so
Can I
can I
ask a
get a
question
motion to
about it?
approve?
So can I just pause?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we need to do comments and questions.
Yeah. And then,
So can
May-
I get a motion to approve items 7.01 to 7.05
so moved.
and a second? Okay, questions or comments from board members?
The
Yeah, so
psychiatric evaluation.
I
is
know
that-
Stace had a question,
Oh, sorry, Stace.
but then also,
I just want to know about the psychiatric evaluation. Is that for one student or is that?
He's the doctor that does it for all of ours, but we have one specific case that the child psych team wanted me to make sure I got it on the agenda so they could move forward.
And that psychiatric evaluate, I didn't know that honestly, I didn't know that that's what we did.
It's on an as-needed, maybe 3 or 4 year, maybe, give or take.
So that's not something that's sent out for like, I know when kids have IEPs, a lot of times they get that passed, like if their parent applies for SSI or things like that, they do the psychiatric evaluation also through there. That's what I was wondering, I didn't know the school did it also.
I just know this is who we use, I don't know.
So we have, this is the time of year, and so during annual evaluations and then new registrations, is litigation season for special education. And so some of our settlement agreements include deals like this, opposed to sending a child out to a private placement. And so with this particular case, this was one of the agreements in order to move forward with the evaluation process and then the placement process for the child in district.
Okay, and that's not covered by that child's family's insurance, health insurance?
Part of the court
The
settlement.
Part of the
Yeah,
litigation?
settlement agreement, yep.
Anybody else?
I'm sorry, did you answer when they're due? And I just
I'd
missed
have
it.
to go back. It would have been
Okay.
20 days, I think it's the last week in July.
Last week of July. And then you said they were on the website.
Yeah, I can't find them.
I was just gonna say, I
I'm
don't
gonna
see
look at
them on
Melissa. I
here.
know you guys said you put them. I don't see them under the business office. So yeah, thanks. Yeah, I sent them to you and Patrick. Yeah, they should be up there, but we'll get them up there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if this is germane here, but in terms of, since we're talking about RFPs, any idea about RFPs for the field sites? Like when, was that something that we'll be looking at in August?
I drafted a construction manager RFP. I sent that to the borough. Today's Monday, right? I sent it last week because the shared service agreement says that we will collaboratively design the fields and work with, hiring a construction manager and all the other people. So I sent the draft RFP to the borough and their folks. We're trying to, it's hard to get 6 people, 7 people's calendars together, but we've been throwing dates around. We want to get a joint meeting with the borough and our folks to go over the RFP to make sure everybody's okay with it before I issue it. Last set of dates I think I threw out there was the first week of August, the 3rd or the 5th, to meet with the borough officials. But there is a draft floating out there in the cyber world.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you also tell me what programs or students benefit from that Perkins grant?
Gonna look at Dr. Walker on that one. The Perkins grant. Who benefits from Perkins?
That's engineering, right?
The CT engineering students?
Yes.
Or who benefit from that? Okay, thank you.
Good?
We good?
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMarco?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Z?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes. Okay, so there's nothing for curriculum tonight, right?
Correct.
Okay, so moving on
And-
to section 9, personnel.
Personnel's just a few items.
I think
I'm sorry, wait,
Meredith
what?
wanted to talk.
Wait, what?
Personnel, we just have a few items.
Wait, did I,
Meredith unmuted.
you wanted to say-
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry,
What are we
Mary, go
talking
ahead.
about?
For
There's nothing on
curriculum.
curriculum. You know I like to talk.
I apologize.
Good evening. I will just, I have nothing formal in terms of items for you to review or vote on tonight, but there will be a slew in August, so don't worry. I'll just say that on a couple updates from my department, and then we can move right along to section 9. Just a few updates from curriculum and instruction. We've been reviewing our finalized 25-26 outcomes and using that information to set our 26-27 goals and priorities at the school level and the department level. We've been reviewing the Master Bell schedule and the elementary minutes to follow to ensure that we have all of our different priorities lined up with our teaching minutes and our contractual time for our staff members. We're reviewing and revising curricula to meet new standards or new topics that we'll be implementing for the fall of 2026, and a variety of other things that I'm probably forgetting in the moment here. But yeah, we'll have a variety of items for your review and consideration in August, as usual, as we get back into the start of the school year with our district professional development plans, our year-long PD calendar, our annual curricular review, our annual mentoring plan review, and all of those things will be before you in August as usual. But I just wanted to give an update on some of the key priorities that our team is focused on in midsummer.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? The calendar for 27, 28, will we be looking at that? Because we said you mentioned that we do a 2-year calendar. We approved one. When would we think?
Yes.
Will we see it sooner or just same timeline?
So on my own summer action plan is to finalize the 2027-2028 academic calendar. As I've shared with you all before, the academic calendar committee did draft the 2027-2028 school year calendar, and included in that is a several-day shift of the teacher's contractual start time in order to begin the school year a bit earlier, and thus to end the school year quite a bit sooner. I think it's around June 14th of 2028, which is almost a full week earlier than this past year, if you'll recall. But in order to do so, there are quite a bit of behind-the-scenes logistics that need to happen with regard to an August start date contractually instead of a September 1 start date. And so that's behind-the-scenes work that our team is doing with our union leaders who are involved in the calendar creation and formation, and so are involved and excited about the opportunity. But we need to make sure that everything's lined up on the back end to accomplish that. And so that's one item on my own summer action plan to finalize and finish and have before you as soon as possible.
Thanks.
So personnel, section 9.01 is a stipend for staff member. This is we negotiated with the association for a preschool kindergarten program coordinator. 9.02 is filling the vacant secondary MTSS coordinator position. 9.03 is summer ESY staff and programmatic updates, specifically nursing for our ESY program. 9.04, this is our ongoing list of transfers and reassignments. 9.05 is the approving or maintaining the current 2007 Danielson framework. However, wanted to plant the seed that we will be requesting an amendment for the August meeting. And so twofold, in order for us to fulfill our CUSAC requirements, we need to approve that we have an evaluation framework. However, the staff evaluation committee, which is made up of teachers, instructional specialists, and administrators, are making a recommendation that we update the teacher framework to 2022 within the system. And so that'll be the recommendation for the August meeting. and we are asking for your approval for items 9.01 to 9.05.
Can I get a motion to approve items 9.01 to 9.05?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Okay, questions or comments from board members?
I have a question about 9.01. What is the stipend a one-time payment, or is that additional salary?
It's for the individual who's fulfilling the role, it's additional salary, but it's not additional salary for one specific individual over and over again, because staffing may change. And so we identified a bulk of work with the association, and we negotiated what was the value of that bulk of work in terms of like registration, program coordination, student assignment process for pre-K and kindergarten, and then we assigned a dollar value using preschool funds to fund it. And so it's for the individual that's currently fulfilling that role, which is an annual thing, yes, it'll be additional salary, but it'll be an annual renewal because another person could actually be fulfilling that role.
It's kind of like a sports. It's like a sports
So it's
coach.
like, yeah, it's
Like a
an
sports
EDP.
coach. Right.
So
So like
it's-
like if
it's
you're
an
the coach
EDP.
for that year, you get that money.
Correct.
If you're the coach for next year, you get that money. And so
Not an adjustment to a base salary, I think was your question.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And then the stipend is for kindergarten and preschool registration? Is that, or pre-K to?
For the past several years, the amount of work that the administrative assistant has carried out to successfully register, enroll, monitor all of the processes related to all pre-K and kindergarten enrollment, we've been using the contractually allowable process for overtime. So if you look at the CEA contract, there's stipulation for individuals who go over their weekly hourly rates, how that can be proactively approved and managed if and when additional work comes about. So that's been happening over the last many years. And so this is an adjustment to how we're going about paying that funds. It's not a change. The work's already been happening and will continue to happen. We're shifting it to a stipend model, primarily to number one, just a logistical ease of no longer have to submit monthly timesheets. It's been one of those sort of just one-off things that happens again and again. And so this is just codifying the amount, and so that there's not an ongoing logistical need to submit and approve timesheets. And secondly, to recognize the work that this individual has been doing above and beyond their job description.
And is this cheaper than paying overtime, or is this about the same? Or it seems like a pretty significant.
It ends up being the same. It's just what the association asked for was to provide a degree of stability for the staff member so that they can plan for their family. And so we worked with them probably over a 4-week period in order to make sure that we were honoring the commitment and we were providing them the stability that they were requesting.
So this was like a joint with CEA?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Well,
Thanks for
so-
answering my question.
So is this stipend specific to the individual or to the role?
The role.
And I think I missed that there's what is the scope of coordination exactly? Like accepting applications, like I'm trying to think of what is a similar role, and do they also have a similar stipend structure?
I don't think there's any other similar role that I can think of off the top of my head, but this involves the registration of all incoming pre-K3, pre-K4, rising kindergarten, all of their proofs of residence, all of the documentation involved for anyone who's enrolled a student. You know all of the things that go into that. for our pre-K 3 and pre-K 4. The stipend accounts for the assignment of the school location that takes into account students' IEP, multilingual learners, any health needs, distance from the school site, to coordinate the placement of all pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 children, and then the same again for all rising kindergartners with the full registration processes of all of the collection of documents required to fully enroll a student and their family in the district, and to place the children in each of our elementary school locations. And so it is a significant amount of work.
We quantified it with the association, and it translates to about 250 hours over the course of the year. The breakdown of the actual roles and responsibilities by month, starting through September in the upcoming year, going all the way through August in the following year.
And is that, did you say that's being paid from preschool? The grant is the 8,000. Got it. Okay, so that makes a big difference, I think, also.
I have a separate question about the evaluation tools. We tabled this from last month. There was some questions about these being, like, existing. Did we confirm that these exist and that we can approve these as they're listed? Again, okay.
Everything that you see before you tonight, hang on, I gotta open my computer so that I can speak accurately. Everything that you see, oh Lord have mercy, 9.05. Everything that you see before you, Charlotte Danielson 2007 framework, the 7 or 8 bullet points below that exist. And as Fred said a few minutes ago, we will be coming back to you in August to amend and update the teachers only, the first bullet point, to utilize the Danielson 2022 framework. The 2022 framework doesn't exist for the other 7 or 8 categories beneath that, which is what we were discussing and tabled last month. And so we went back to, Dr. Walker went back to our desk committee, which is the staff and teachers and leadership committee that works with central office to review all of the all the evaluative frameworks, and review to ensure that while we could move forward with an updated model for teachers, it would not include the other members on this list. And so we wanted to make sure that they understood what that would mean, and that we had their full endorsement and approval. And so we just got that a few hours ago, and so we didn't want to amend an already live agenda. So we'll be back in August with that update.
Thank you.
I had one quick question about the home care therapies. The nurse, is that, I'm sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that, so tell us more about the home care therapy school nurse. Put it that way.
We approved them in June, I believe.
Is that the
As-
ESS?
No.
Okay.
This is they're specialized nursing. And we needed, trying to remember the story here, we needed a nurse for ESY. We thought we had a nurse for ESY. She had accepted the job and then decided not to. So we already had a contract. So with these people, Dr. Whitehouse reached out to see if one of the nurses that we had contracted with would be able to accommodate ESY for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And being we already had, the contract, I think the way it was written was, I think, for specific nursing services. So she called to see if they would be willing to extend us like the same hourly rate before our ESY, which was a shortened period of time, and they were able to do so. Did I? Okay, cool.
And the students that are in ESY, many of them are medically fragile and required a higher level of nursing. And without having our full-time nurses there because they're on summer vacation, we needed to do this.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMarco?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Z?
Yes.
Mr. Sorry, he's not here. Mr. Dilkus?
We all look alike, it's okay. Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes. Go ahead.
And as far as policies, we sent a bunch of policies out to the board last week. I think Irene sent everything out. Those will all be on for the August agenda, just so you know.
So we're not voting on anything for section 10. All right, so. Can I have a motion to adjourn, unless anybody has anything else? Okay. A second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.